so glad that you were able to join us today. And I think this whole conversation kind of got started. Well, first we decided at NAADA we wanted to try to do some alumni virtual beg, borrow, and steals. And so I think this was a hot topic on our listserv, and how we work together as part of the advancement team and alumni relations, feeling like there might be some ways that we can better do that process and sharing those ideas. And so I think it's difficult because some of our institutions are part of our development offices while others are not. And so I think that is something that is challenging, to make sure that the communication lines are open and that we're sharing ideas. We're often attending some of the same events. Some of us may not be. And so I think that's where I went back to Kirby's circle of life conversation about how all of us really do play an important role as we look at the advancement model, also looking at as a prospective student, to an alum, to a donor, and so finding that passion in our students and our alumni. And so all of us have a role in that process. And so how do we strengthen that relationship with our colleagues? And so with that, I asked Kirby to maybe share some insights and lead us in a discussion today to kind of take us down that path of how we build those communication tools or ideas, share best practices, etc. So with that, Kirby, I'll let you introduce yourself, but we appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing some insights.
Great. Thank you, Tina. Wonderful to see or hear all of you where you are. And since this is a beg, borrow, and steal, I'm going to ask everybody at the appropriate time to unmute where you are, because I want you to do some sharing with this experience. Now, it's so interesting, just that word advancement and a consideration of what all it means at higher education. Well, the intriguing thing is, I think it means something different on every one of our campuses. And so the reality of what you hear shared today from me, Tina, or any of our colleagues, it's your role to interpret that for your campus. Because what Beg, Borrow, and Steal is it's best practices at our campuses. But the other thing too is sometimes what we beg, borrow, and steal is what don't do under any circumstance, no matter what your campus is. Trust us. We promise it won't work. So sometimes it's the good we share, or what isn't so good we can pull from beg, borrow, and steal. So would everybody agree with that and understand? So it's about interpreting it for your campus. So just to start and give us a lay of the land so we can kind of hear who is here, if everybody would just briefly share, and if you can see on your screen, we'll go from left to right. So we'll start with Faith. Just everybody kind of give your name, what your current position is, and then just a few words to describe you feel like your role or where your segment of the advancement cycle is, what the relationship is with the fundraising or development components of your institution. So Tina, I'm going to have you begin, then I'll go, and that way we'll kind of give a model of just how that those few brief words can really describe your relationship. So Tina, go ahead.
Tina Beal, Director of Alumni Relations for the College of Agriculture, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences, ACES for short, at the University of Illinois. And I have had a strong relationship with our advancement office, development officers. I have originally moved from our advancement or our marketing department back into our office in the last month. And so that relationship is really important as we develop those relationships with our alumni.
And I'm Kirby Player, Clemson University. I'm Director of College Relations, and our relationship with fundraising, many of you have heard the circle of life. It's something that we embrace and believe at every level. And the word that I use for our relationship is we have a trusting relationship, which I think is one of the keys. Wherever you are within the world with fundraising and development, you've got to have genuine trust among your team members, and that trust leads to significant, ongoing, and continuous collaboration. Faith?
Faith Brooks Mason, and I'm down or up at Michigan State University in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And this is my second week doing the job. So it's been busy. Yesterday was my first board meeting, leading my first board meeting. I've had a really good relationship with our development officers in my former role. And Catherine has obviously had a really good relationship with the development officers and when she was in this role. So I expect that to continue. I don't know if there's anything else.
That's great, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Jill, can you unmute and share with us?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Quartz. I'm the career consultant at Michigan State, and I just saw that there was a NAADA webinar, and I just wanted to tag along and learn and listen to know what best practices that you guys talk about with alumni that I kind of apply to career services.
Excellent. Always great having student services people with us from whence many of us have come. Kathy?
Sorry, I had to find the button. Kathy Carr, Director of Alumni and Career Services for the University of Florida College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. And I'm actually, I do alumni work, but I am housed in the dean's office. So I work closely with our advancement office, but not directly for our advancement office.
All right. Kara?
Hi, this is Kara Lidke from the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Our external relations office in the college works very closely with our development team at the Wisconsin Foundation and Alumni Association. My supervisor, Heidi Zorb, is the Associate Dean for Advancement and External Relations. She and I meet with two members of the development team every other week. So we have a very close relationship that way. And this is Nikki Wachowski. She started 2 weeks ago, and so I'll just say ditto for her.
Good. Hey, Gabby? Hey, she might be in. Haley, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, folks. I'm Haley Cook with the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Iowa State University. And my role is the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations. Our Alumni Relations unit is actually housed in our communications office. But currently, we share a hallway with our development team. So we are relocated, and you can see my 90s fabulous curtains back here. We've been relocated to the Iowa State Memorial Unit where Curtis Hall goes under renovation. So we are really cohesive. We do a lot of work together, but it does allow a certain amount of freedom for our alumni relations unit to be in a separate area from our foundation office.
That doesn't mean the Curtis League has been put out of business, does it?
No, the Curtis League of Awesomeness continues. Yes, you don't have to worry about that.
Y'all just redoing the Bat Cave.
You got it. That's right.
Great. Okay. Y'all look like we're losing people off and on, and Peter's gone. Who wants to go next?
Danica's here. I can go if you'd like.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Danica Kirkpatrick. I am the Executive Director of the Purdue Agriculture Alumni Association. I've been in the role for 3 months now, so and I love being on here and seeing all these familiar faces. I will remember the next time to bring my laptop to work so I have a camera because my desktop does not have one. So I'm on the phone and I'm on the webinar. But we have a really great relationship with our advancement office or our development team. We're right across the hall from them, but I would use the word partners to describe our relationship with them, but I would use the word foundational for the description of the work that we do that helps with their office. Like, you know, what we do helps them and what they do helps us. So I think both of those are foundational.
Very good. Very good. Okay, who wants to go next?
Can y'all hear me by any chance?
Yes, we can, Meg.
All right, this is Gabby Mountain.
Okay, Gabby, okay.
So sorry about that. I tried to take my computer off the docking station and I'm not sure what happened.
We're just glad you're with us.
All right. Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here with the College of Ag and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech. I work under Jamie Lucero. Recently, we've married donor relations and alumni relations to kind of form an engagement task force. So a lot of the activities that I do are both donor relations and alumni relations. So we work very closely with development here at Virginia Tech.
Great. Okay, who else wants to share? Okay, Meg.
Hi, this is Meg Kester. I'm with the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and I do the alumni engagement piece for our college. I am located in the Dean's office, and I'm part of the Dean's office team, and I work closely with our foundation.
Good. Okay, who are we missing that hadn't shared that wants to? Okay.
Hey, this is Sherry Abrams. I'm at the University of Georgia College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, and Suzanne is here with me. So we both work with alumni engagement, but we're housed in our Development and Alumni Relations office. We implemented Kirby's Circle of Life after he presented again at NAADA. So while we're not in the same building as Academic Affairs or our college communications office, we meet with them once a month, if not more, but we have our official Lion King Circle of Life meeting once a month. We have one tomorrow. So we are bridge building right now. We're trying to be good citizens.
Yeah, we had a pretty long conversation, so I'm glad to hear that's going well. So, okay, who else hadn't gone? I think it keeps jumping around on my screen, and Peter's disappeared. Caitlin, Susan, anybody else want to share? If everybody feels like they just want to listen, we can go ahead and start. Anybody else want to share? Okay, well, wonderful. Well, welcome, everybody. Tina's asked me just to kind of share to lay the groundwork, but I'm asking others to step in here. I think what's very interesting about this particular topic for beg, borrow, and steal is that often when we're doing beg, borrow, and stealing, we're really beg, borrow, and stealing the nuts and bolts so often what we do. The reality of this beg, borrow, and steal, I believe, is twofold. It's about principles and relationships. And the one thing I will say, I've been at Clemson 30 years. From the start of my career to now, I would say our development office and foundation has gone through 4 to 5 reorganizations. You see everything from development officers' house, specifically in colleges, being supervised by deans, to completely segmented, separated, where you've got development officers that are assigned different colleges and there's almost no relationship, to the idea of consortium assignments, where you have a development officer working in different colleges, one's handling corporate, one's handling individual relationships, one's handling annual giving under $25,000. So all of us probably have seen those shifts and changes. And it can sometimes be discouraging because once we've gotten used to something, we've established relationships, it changes. The other thing I see about the fundraising development world that is very different from all of us who very much get our excitement from relationship building and long-term connections and institutional memory. I mean, I know many of you personally have sat down and talked to you. What gets you excited is when that student that you worked with 15 years ago is now serving on your alumni board, or they helped you with a project and they come back and say, we did this at my company and I learned so much there. That's where we get our excitement from, those relationships and helping others. In the development world, for any of you that I've put the development hat on 3 different times over my 30 years because there wasn't a college development officer, they left, the dean asked me to do it. It's a very numbers-driven world over there. It was the difference when I realized organic chemistry wasn't for me and went into ag education rather than food science. It was like coming home. So when I go to the development world, they are so metrics-driven, numbers-driven. So there's some whole translational part that we have to consider when it comes to that side. And the principle I want to put forth that I have always utilized, and it's not necessarily an easy thing to do because in some ways we're having to acknowledge this reality. And so this is kind of a a trivia question for everybody. Not trivia, but your perception. When you think of the advancement, whether you think of it as an advancement hierarchy or even within the circle hierarchy, the circle of life, when we're thinking about king of the jungle, who do you think, when you think about salaries, access to upper administration, budget availability for travel, doing events, who within our group usually has that preeminent place? Come on, y'all can say it. We don't have any development officers on the call.
Development officers.
Development officers. You know, it can be very demoralizing when my student service people who work diligently, those of you are, you know, Kathy, you're working at nights, you're working on weekends, you're responding to emails. When they see that some of my development officers are making double, sometimes triple of what they do, it can be very demoralizing. So, you know, it's just a recognition too, and that they're the ones that go to the president's box and the fine dinners and all these kind of things, you know. And so one of my remedies is I'm saying, well, you know, there are development positions available all the time. You're welcome to apply for one. But when you realize I just couldn't survive there. Many of you know Kim Arp from our office. If you want to know what it's like to truly be a student services person and work in the development world, have a conversation with Kim Arp. When I asked her to do this for us, she said it was like I pushed her off a cliff into a shark tank. That's Kim's description of what it's like to live in the development world. And even though she's been there now for over 10 years and is being very successful, got a multi-million-dollar gift that we announced at our tailgate this fall, Kim still says, you know, it is just not an easy place to be. And so our development counterparts are paid and do what they do for a reason, and it's very much you've got to produce, and it's what have you done for me this year, not what you've done over time. So, but I think recognizing those differences, the reason I just bring that up is because it's oftentimes the elephant in the room. And even when we go to NAADA, who is our largest contingent and who is the changeover and where so many of the new folks come from? It's that fundraising arm. And so when I realized that, and I went, and for these 3 different times, I went from about 96 to 98, I handled our development stuff from about 2000, 2001, and then for a year span, about 2003, 2004, particularly because turnover is often far more, happens a lot more often in the development world than within our world. We often shift. And so I got to do that. So I learned a great deal. And then that's just where I developed this spirit of, many of you know the concept of servant leadership. I decided I would become a servant leader to whoever was doing that development role. And also part of this was because I was hungering to fully develop this circle of life concept. As my career progressed, I had the opportunity to speak into who we were appointing as development officers. And all of you have the opportunity to do that, even if you've been in your position 2 weeks. When the opportunity comes and there is a development position open, learn what the development office is looking for and get out there and find somebody that you think connects and understands the circle and work to put them in that position. Since Kim jumped into the shark tank off the cliff, some of you have now met Margaret Owens. We've got Joni Jordan. We now have a complete circle, whereas before I felt like we had a circle that kind of ended at development. So the first principle is be a servant leader, and that means be a learner of what your development office is doing, and then figure out how you can serve that person. Because oftentimes, especially if they bring somebody in that isn't an alumnus of your institution and is away, you can be the entree person that connects them with important relationships. You can give that transference of the positive feelings that potential donors and alumni feel towards your programs for cultivation and service, to translate that to the development officer. Now, I know that sometimes can be scary, and that I'll never forget when I was taking around a development officer. This must have been I think this was the 3rd time I'd done this. And one of our very large donors and alumni said when we sat down, well, hello, Kirby. The last time we had lunch together, you were introducing me to another development officer. So that was somewhat very uncomfortable, but acknowledged that reality but it just allowed an open conversation. And that idea of transferring trust can be so helpful, even at the risk of your relationship, because the ultimate goal of fundraising is to support what we do, to support our students, to support our faculty, and to support our programs. I mean, a great example, I see Kathy shaking her head. I'm right now being tapped to develop an agricultural leadership initiative in the state of South Carolina. Florida had a donor endow their leadership program numbers of years ago, and it is a stellar program. And so much of it stems from having that support from a private donor when they were getting their leadership going. Wouldn't you say, Kathy, that's really helped that program immensely?
Basically, our fundraisers pay for everything that I do in my job.
Yeah.
They don't pay for me, but they pay for food or, most of our event costs are from private dollars. I work with scholarships. That's all private support. So I need their money to do my job.
Yes. And so that's what helps us for me, that's what helped me to, with humility, initiate to offer my services. And sometimes, and really what it is, because the development officer is so metrics driven, bottom line is they want to use you. And I put use in quotations, not in a negative sense, but you're part of their strategy. And using that strategy will ultimately benefit them, but it will eventually come back and benefit you. Now, this isn't perfect. There's no relationship is perfect and no person is perfect. But it's amazing when you start initiating that, and especially for those of you that are seeking to create a circle, recognizing maintaining that is crucial. So that's the first thing. Be a servant leader to your fundraisers. And then the second piece of that, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you've never read it, or if you have read it, go back and reread it or get one of the things. I try to go through this book every year, every couple of years. I actually refer to it quite a bit. And the first principle, that trust foundational piece, because we see so much change in our institutions, especially with deans, department chairs, new faculty coming in, just constantly reminding ourselves of what it takes to build trust in the fastest. There's another book called The Speed of Trust. That's a great book by Covey. If you can gain trust quickly, then you can be part of a person's success at an institution. And so that's what builds those deposits, because for us, what we found is that because we've got such strong relationships with development officers, as we're developing programs, as Kathy says, we can go sit down and say, do you have any donors that might be interested down this program? As I'm getting ready to start our leadership program, which is called the Palmetto LEAF, which stands for Leadership for the Environment, Agriculture, and Forestry. I literally, one of my first meetings was with Kim and Margaret to say, okay, this is going to require significant private funding and would love to see it named for a development officer one day. Can you help me? And so when you build that trust, it's doing that. And that's not just about an individual relationship with you. It's making sure whenever you're holding an event, whenever alumni are coming back to visit you, when you're putting together your career fair and companies are coming to town, always asking yourself the question, who on my advancement team needs to know? We do a semester by semester and summer calendar of all of our student services and alumni and stewardship activities, so that is dispersed among our department chairs, our department heads, our deans, administrators, extension, development people, even our central university alumni people. We want to make sure that if anybody feels like there's somebody that they want to have that touch or relationship, we don't want them to all of a sudden find so-and-so came to campus and did not know. It can create some very difficult feelings. The other thing we find is that it's so important for us this is a story from a couple of years ago, that we had a company that established a scholarship, a long-time company, been coming to the career fair since we started them in the 90s. And our career placement person was talking with them, and they were kind of talking about scholarships and things, and the representative from the company said well, we're hopeful that what we've done will be a success. Well, the development officer had no idea what they were talking about. So this kind of nodded the head and agreed, as we've all done sometimes, and then went back and called the development officer. They had just established a significantly large scholarship, and we did not know. And so that's where making sure your communication lines are fully open with your development and fundraisers, where they are in the pipeline. So we actually send list of attendees of our career fair, of our alumni events. We have them in an Excel spreadsheet. We send that around. Our development officers may not be able to be at an event, but they will update us on that person. So that is a real tactician, strategic more of that. And so they just type over in we have a space for notes, and then we all look at that, and it helps so much. In fact, sometimes we've come close to getting the gift almost closed and said, I think it's time for you to contact this person, because just in my conversation, they brought it up, they initiated, kind of said where they were, and then that's led to closing luncheons. So just giving those notes, and especially understanding that there's usually primary and secondary development officers that work with donors. Making sure they're key on that, as well as sometimes what we'll be told is athletics is working on this person for a gift. Be very conscious about saying anything or any general fundraising messages you're given. Just be conscious that athletics has really got a big ask out for them right now, so just be aware of that. We do the same thing when we're sending out requests for small gifts, like for golf tournaments, sponsoring meals, maybe shooting sports events, anything that's fundraising alumni. We make sure it's run by our development officers, that we're not doubling up, or if there isn't a message that needs to be added, or sometimes they want to do the ask for that small gift because they maybe want to combine it with something else. And the great thing with modern technology, all it takes is you remembering and asking the question, who else needs to know regarding my various events? So that is what we found that maintains that aspect of kind of what are the nuts and bolts of working with it. The other thing we've learned to do is we started using Zoom that we're using today to have meetings with our development people, because they're literally on the other side of campus. And if y'all don't know what the definition of a modern university is, it's thousands of people gathered around a common parking problem. So we found that we were some ways not wanting to meet. When Zoom started showing up, we literally do quick meetings over Zoom, and it just makes the conversation more personal, interactive, and we actually feel like we're having a meeting as opposed to just doing email or text or phone calls. So recognize establishing that relationship. And as they shared there at Georgia, having that monthly meeting is crucial. We have a monthly meeting with our alumni and student services group, and our development group joins us on a kind of rotational basis of multiple times each semester and then over the summer. So they don't meet with us every time because they are already meeting themselves to death. They come for face-to-face every couple of meetings that we have, so that we're up on top of things. The other aspect, the last principle I will share with you is recognizing you often have a venue that your development team can utilize for gift announcements, for stewardship, or for engagement. And we sometimes forget that. We just think of what our primary goal is for an event. But if you'll sit down and talk with your stewardship officer and your development officers, you can recognize we now have our tailgate. We're doing multi-million-dollar gift announcements at our tailgate, which has added a whole new aspect to it. When we host our career fair, when we're having our entrepreneurial competitions, we now are inviting donors to that for stewardship purposes. And what we're finding is we've already had some donors step up and make gifts to certain programs because they didn't even know what was going on. And it just lets donors see what your college is doing. And I know that's sometimes hard because all the details and minutiae involved just pulling off a career fair or just doing a lunch and learn or a trip with your students or field trip. You know, there's enough details to worry about that. You think, do I want to add one more aspect to my plate? But if you just open it up, lots of times your development team or stewardship team will do all the work to get your donors there. They'll host them there. And it really just turns our events into showcases for the development team. And unfortunately, I find because we're all so busy, sometimes development officers do not even know what the flow of the semester and the calendar is like we think everybody knows about it. So that's where communicating that with them and offering ideas, especially when new ideas come up, or say a new young faculty member is doing something great with their a undergraduate research initiative, and they're going to have a one of the things is we often have ag mechanics groups do special harvesting out in the field. Just wonderful places to bring potential donors and current donors to steward them and let them see what's happening in the college. So based on those principles, what I'd like now is let's do some begs for and still. From those ideas, who would like to share insights, kind of like Kathy did, of what's meaningful? What are some things that you see happening on your campus that you believe relate to those, or it might even be principles I haven't shared, or different ideas that you think have been crucial for your campus? So we can share those best practices, but also any of you that have questions, you're curious, things like how do I get entree? What's the best way that I could start building this relationship? Share any challenges, problems, or best practices that you have. And so, Tina, I'll kind of turn to you to kind of direct and facilitate that, and offer your insights on what I've shared as we get everybody talking.
I think that was great, Kirby. Thank you so much for that background. I think it's something that we all take it for granted sometimes. We're in the middle of planning an event, we're moving things forward, and are we communicating that right message? And so is there anyone that would like to share some of your practices as you're looking at hosting alumni events, or making sure that you have that communication line open with all the staff within your college?
Well, this is Peter Pamkowski, Cornell University. And unfortunately, Zoom froze on me in the beginning of the conversations here. So I had to reboot, and we finally got back on.
Great.
I was able to hear what Kirby said. And I think one of the key things is having the communication. The key thing that your development office, let your alumni or the volunteers know, that fundraising is supporting you, supporting the programs. That is so important. That probably for the alumni organizations, it's probably good to have your development officer come in, speak to the alumni, and just say, what's their process and stuff, and what is it doing for the college. I think that is so, so important. Being involved with, because I'm a volunteer, being involved with alumni affairs for a good number of years. We used to be where we had a development representative on the board, but we had some past presidents which were adamant, friend-raising versus fundraising, two distinct things. And they were adamant, that we are not fundraisers, we are friend-raising. And that gets back to what you said, Tina. The conversations we had earlier this summer, we had quite an exchange of emails. And that was one of the ideas I had for on the education committee as a proposal for an educator seminar. But Kirby is hitting it right on the nose. And right now, our leadership team, or our alumni office, Sharon Dietzer, where a number of you know Sharon Dietzer, she became Associate Dean, but she's Associate Dean of Development and Alumni Affairs. So it's combining the two. Our new engagement director for Alumni Affairs is now also in charge of the annual fund. So you can see how some of that has merged together, where probably some people feel like at first I said, see, now we're getting involved with fundraising, where we were involved with friend raising. But what Kirby mentioned, the key thing is know what your development office is doing, know that they support your alumni organization, the programs that we have at the college. So I think that is such a key feature. And that's something I will pass along. So that puts it in a nutshell right now.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
Anyone else? This is not the time to shy away.
So this is Gabby from Virginia Tech. One thing that Jamie and I have started doing with each of our events, and it's really helped get a lot of the development officers engaged with our events, is we do an event briefing. So before the event, I prepare a summary of all the details. I pull any registrants with capacity, the bio if necessary. So I guess I just note that we're under the advancement model. So I have access to all of the donor database and things. I'm not sure if that's universal across all of the alumni professionals, but I'm in the database just like all the fundraisers are. But we're just really protecting all of the information, including what the strategic purpose for the event is, giving them some sample messaging, things to say. That's been really great as far as getting fundraisers and getting our deans and people out and knowing why they're there. A lot of times that some of our fundraisers kind of roll their eyes and say, another event, we want to come to another thing, oh, there isn't any important people at this. And so trying to really communicate their why they're there has been successful for us. Something I've also tried to start doing with the fundraisers are I will write them a script for interacting with their donors and say, hey, invited to this event. Please reach out to your people. It gives you a touch. It gives you a contact to file. You can call and go through these details or send an email with these details. Haven't gotten a lot of buy-in, but it's just something that I see as so easy, and they have all the information and the excuse to call and talk to someone. So I'd love if anybody has had success with that or buy-in with fundraisers and promoting and advertising events.
Excellent.
I think that's really good. We do briefing papers for our fundraisers too, but we don't take it as far as putting strategic purpose messaging, telling them why they're there and why it's important for them to be in the room. And I think that's a really good thing to add. So thank you.
We just recently had that conversation as a part of our development MGO staff meeting too. Is why we have a lot of turnover in our department heads on campus. And so not only making sure that they're present and they're meeting our alumni, many of them know, students that they may have had, et cetera, but giving them a purpose for being there, maybe giving them specific people to talk to, and really recognizing that we want them to engage with the folks, not just attend the event. And so that's something we've been trying to talk about as we plan events and work together as well to make sure that they have a vital role in that, that day. Anyone else? Thoughts, ideas, things that have worked for you?
Hey guys, this is Haley, and kind of similar to what everyone else has kind of expressed, one of the things that works really well for us, and it actually, we're pretty spoiled because in our location to our development office, when we're in Curtis Hall, they're right across the hall from us. When we're all snuggled up in the Memorial Union, they're literally right next to us. But it has been really helpful to walk down the hall and say, hey, I do a lot of walkover stuff with our event specifics, but one of the things that we have set up that works really well is that we have a set number of, if you're doing hard copy invitations for any type of an event, I always have a couple that I usually print an additional 30 that I walk over to the foundation office and say, these at your discretion, please, or if you have a list, let me know. And then we make sure that they have a kind of a not fully formatted version of the online invitation so that they can customize it however they like and send out to specific alumni if they want to invite them, if it's a certain demographic event that they think would fit well within what they're doing. And then I make sure that once a week we do registration updates to them so that they can see, especially with some of our bigger events like the football barbecue or basketball game, so that once a week, at the end of the week, they can see who is registered within that week and if they need to reach out to them directly, or if they need to determine who from their team needs to attend the event. So usually it kind of depends on the time of year and what the event is, but we have 2 events where the entire development team joins us for an alumni relations event. And then others, they do make sure that there's a representative from the development team there. It's just a matter of, who's in the room that they would like to send.
Haley, do you think that it's been beneficial to send that out at the end of each week versus sending it out at the end or a few days before your event?
Yeah, it's been very helpful for us, because then we can have some of those conversations that, may or may not be awkward, depending upon, we all have special people, right? Folks that, whether you are friend-raising or fundraising, side note conversations and all that fun stuff. The thing that's helpful for us is that we do have access to the Foundation's One system to look up basic information on our alumni, but we do not have full access to the One system. So it'll come down that we had a really great example a couple of months ago where one of the Foundation folks walked down and said, hey, I do want you to know that this person has recently turned vegan. They did not share that in their, dietary restrictions on the registration page or anything like that. But it's the relationship that we had with the development office that frankly saved me a really frantic trip to a grocery store to buy a salad for this individual, or, whatever you could get at last minute on a game day. And in Iowa, we're protein raisers, right? So we don't have a lot of vegan options really at a readily available space. So, those type of things have been really helpful. But then also so that they can plan accordingly. We had one example was we had a donor who came to a basketball game, and this was several years ago. And because of that experience, they chose to give a gift to our students, which was great. It's administered through the CALS Council, which is awesome. They had a great time talking with some of our student ambassadors while they were at the event. So it's kind of, Kirby's circle of life, right? Our students were at the event. We'd invited this donor who attended as well. He doesn't have much of a tie to the college beyond, a one-time gift that he had given. And because of that experience, he was able to, the development team basically were able to determine whether or not they wanted to, do a special invitation for him to other things, or if they needed to reach out and bring him into something else. So a good example would be on our football game. So this was the basketball game, and he had made a comment that he really enjoyed the basketball game and the students. When the football game came time, they were looking at the list every week, and they weren't finding him on the list, and so they had to make sure that they stepped out and did a specific invitation to him. So that he could come and engage there too. That was very rambling. I apologize.
That was good.
And y'all are vegan, and now y'all just feed all the vegetables to the pigs.
That's, they do like them some soybeans here. So there's that option, right?
Before we move too far, let me comment on a couple of things if I can. Faith shared about that development officers rolling their eyes. And one of the things I think of is we had who became actually the lead for all higher level development officers here at the university. Something she used to always say that just kind of made my skin crawl is when she would talk about alumni people and student services people, she would always say, they're a party in a box. This idea that we are waiting for the next event, we can't wait, we're doing this, and it's like, and we got orange and purple everywhere, and we got to have name tags, and she used to always say, y'all are just a party in the box. It's just so annoying. But over time, when she got to see our events and understood how we were working, now she's put our development officer over other development officers and our stewardship officer over the other university development officers. So I believe we can impact our entire university's development groups understanding the power of relationships, because it's just part of the DNA of agriculture. Community is what we live on and exist on. So recognize that even though those rolled eyes will come, if we show them how to do it, and Faith kind of knowingly smiled when she said rolled eyes, so I'm sure there was probably something like that. We're doing so-and-so, and they're like, oh, really? Like, we really need to know that one more thing, because they've got a lot. And then something he was saying about that friend raising versus fundraising. We literally, it took several years, and Kim Arp, again, so artfully with great humor, helps key individuals on our alumni board understand how it truly is symbiotic to do the two together. And one of the things we did, being here in the South, we talked about, you know, how would our churches operate if we did not have good fundraising, and then even talking about local high school and school programs. That helped our board members recognize, somehow they think when we cross into college and we're doing what we're doing in college, it is separate from every other entity that has a meaning that we're involved in leadership and volunteerism. Somehow our university is supposed to be different. All the time I hear from you is when we're asking for money. You know, but then if you ask, well, how many fundraisers did you help your child sell magazines or donuts or candy bars when you were, you know, you're in school? Clemson's no different, especially when we understand how state budgets have declined in the last 2 decades to do what we do. So don't kind of just ignore that fundraising, which Peter's talked about, so crucial. Creatively move into that. And what's interesting is some of our board members who used to be the most adamant against fundraising are leading the way. In fact, the one who was most adamant helped lead so that we've established what we call our Capital Century Club, seeking to move all our annual givers to a $100 gift. And we have something called the Centennial Oak here on campus. Just kind of in the geography of our college, we've made that our logo for the Century Club, and we're the first college to actually kind of have our own club related to annual giving to try to move everybody to the $100 level. So as Peter was saying there, and Faith saying, that there can be resistance, and that resistance can shift and change with new officers, but never be afraid to move into it, because these principles are true, and there's anecdotal evidence and even significant research evidence that combining the two creates better results, especially in the long run, than when they're so separated.
One question I had for everyone is, and we talk a lot about pre-event, getting things ready, sharing lists, doing that. What are some suggestions of things that you do post-event? So I know when I am at an alumni event, there's usually development officers at that event. We make sure that if there's key donors or key alums in the audience that represent their areas that they fundraise for, that they're there. There's always a message in regards to, right now we're in With Illinois campaign, and so talking about the campaign. But what do you do after the event? And so if there's follow-up, if there's key people that you want to make sure a development officer knows about, I struggle all the time with putting notes into our alumni database to say, hey, I had this conversation with so-and-so, because I know again, it's back to trust and building that trust with our alums. Sometimes we may hear things differently than a development officer may hear, because they do look to us as that friend. But again, it's that full circle, and how do we share that information afterwards? So does anyone have good tips or advice on that?
So we actually have a weekly meeting where we get together as an advancement office, alumni development professionals, and all of our counselors. During that weekly meeting, we run through anyone who we've had conversations with, anything that would be beneficial for the team. So if I ran into someone at an event and wanted to talk to them, an example would be we had an event and met with a donor. That would be a great idea for communications story on him, and then the development officer to follow up. That person and forward.
Okay.
Those meetings every week.
Okay, thank you. I tried to get most of that. It was hard to hear, so. Any other thoughts, comments?
This is Peter.
Yes, Peter.
We have done, let's see, some events where we do a survey after. How did they like the event?
Yep.
Any suggestions for future events? Would you like to serve on a committee? But one thing that we haven't done is probably, and as Kirby mentioned in his presentation, is it's so important to have these funds to support our programs, to support our alumni organization, which we're non-dues paying now. So we are all members of the alumni organization here at Cornell is to support them and probably having a couple diplomatic questions that we could add to the survey, relating to, let's see, fundraising, to support our programs and stuff. Are there any recommendations that you know of some people that would support this area? Something along those lines. Not sure. It's just an idea, but we have done some surveys where to try to get new committee members, or are they interested to be more involved with your alumni organization, and any ideas that they have in future events.
We've started doing that too, Peter, where we will send a follow-up survey about the event, get ideas for new things, way to engage folks. If we're at that event and say we're at Nash House, which is a dog facility, we had alumni or our department head share some key materials that the department had used, key initiatives that they were working on, with the bill, et cetera. We've been sharing that in our follow-ups with the survey link, but also here's resources to more materials from the college, or key things in relation to our campaign, and linking those so people have questions or want to follow up, they can. So we've been trying to do that as well without having to do a direct ask in an alumni mailing. So.
Very good. And then to be just transparent, as Kirby mentioned, to really educate or not educate, or just be upfront what our funds have been doing. Yeah. And with a few key things that are very, very positive, that they say, hey, look what we have here, or look what has, where our funds have gone to support this initiative.
We often, so many times, look at our big picture. We celebrate the success. Sometimes we don't celebrate the success and tell that story. So I think that's important to always tell the story so people know where their dollars are going to.
Tina, something I do, and I actually kind of do it in event, is key conversation. So if I have a key conversation with a donor or somebody's potential donor, I literally will stop right there and send a quick email to that development officer, or text if I know they're there and can come talk. Because I find what happens if I don't do it in the moment, after cleanup, it's gone from my brain, and I've completely forgotten, and I won't do it. So I literally just put the title key conversation and just type 5 or 10 words, just so I've got it documented, they've got it documented, and then we can follow up with it. I'll literally, and the older I get, the more readily I forget about them. And so that's something I do in an event, and especially if we have done some pre-discussion about the person, and I'm actually initiating the conversation. I find that I'm fresher to do it, and you can slip into the restroom or slip in the corner. You don't want to look like you're just obsessed with your cell phone. But it's a quick way to do it. And you can also, and some people do the same thing by just keeping a couple of sheets of paper in the pocket and just jotting a quick note just to remind them. But I think that's crucial, because that's a relational piece with that person.
I think being able to engage those folks right there, if you have the opportunity, or introducing them and saying, I have a key person that you really need to talk to about this, I think that's good too. So, great. Other questions, thoughts?
I just want to say I do have something I want to close with before we go. So if there are other thoughts, whenever appropriate, call me.
Okay. One other question I have, I heard a few of you talk about the role of students and utilizing maybe ambassadors as you have them work events. Do you have them engage at all and know that there may be key things if they hear? How do they share that information back? Anybody utilize your ambassadors in that way?
We do. Let's see, at Cornell, we do have student ambassadors. We have 2 undergrad and then 1 graduate student, let's see, on the board. And so when we go do a roundtable discussion, any initiatives or any concerns that they have, they're brought out in the open. And that has worked very well to have that representation, on your alumni board.
And I was kind of thinking during events. I know our ambassadors used to, and I haven't been doing this, but they used to be assigned some key folks to make sure that they talked to. And if they had any insight conversations, then they may have written a note down and shared that back with staff. That was done several years ago with some of our ambassadors, and seems like a great idea, but it seems like I'm planning the event that I forget to utilize our students in that way. So
Jill and I have kind of talked about that a little bit. Our Moral Fellows is a pretty new program in its newness. I think we had a previous version a number of years ago, but only this cohort or this renaming or retooling of it for about 2 years. We've had success using our FFA state officers in some of our FFA events, but I don't think that we went back and captured conversations or key points that they may have made, and I think that that's a really strong point to make.
It's training those ambassadors so they know what to listen to as well and hear.
And I'm sure many of you do this, is that we work with our stewardship office, that when donors are on campus, we try to make sure that the students and faculty that are benefiting from their programs, they can have an interaction. That's powerful, but that's very common, is one we sometimes forget to think about.
Great. Okay, any last minute thoughts, questions, ideas you'd like to share before Kirby? I know everyone's busy this time of year, so.
I think something just that Kirby just mentioned is like students like our internship program, or let's see, where they do get grants and stuff, just to be sure that the students, let's see, send a thank you to, say, the sponsors of those funds right there. That means a lot to the sponsor. And I know that's something where NAADA has done a great job too, as far as encouraging, NAADA members to thank our sponsors. That help support our organization.
Yep. Those handwritten thank you notes are still important to some people, so that's good. Okay, Kirby, I'll turn it back over to you then, and we can wrap up our afternoon.
Great. Well, thank you, Tina. And again, thank you everybody for giving your time. Just want to close with these thoughts, and that oftentimes when we as professionals or with any careers, when students are finishing college, we get a snapshot of where our colleagues or professional mentors are within their career. And we can look at where we are, and then sometimes there can be a sense of discouragement. I want to remind everybody that wherever you are, whether you're 2 weeks on the job, 20 years on the job, 10 years on the job, you can start right where you are, because it's all about relationships. It isn't about what an administrator is or isn't doing. It isn't about what resources we have available. Building relationships basically costs you nothing. So that's the key, I think, takeaway from all the comments that were shared by people today. If you listen to them, it was about connections between individuals and various components of your university. Because I think sometimes we can fabricate roadblocks in our minds based on, I don't have the longevity or the credibility of that person. I haven't been here that long. I don't know as much as I need to. It's all about building relationships. And remember, building relationships are oftentimes about asking for help. When there's somebody that's been at the institution longer than you, or you feel like they're venerable, asking for their help, everybody loves to give help. And that can begin building the relationship for you. So as we talk about something like this that is in some ways nebulous and not as strategic or tactile as other things we do in a beg, bar, and steal, that aspect of building a relationship, it's all about the golden rule of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Asking the question, who else needs to know? And sometimes, and this is often what's very uncomfortable for us, is blowing your own horn, letting other people what's doing that is good and strong, but then again, recognizing what others are doing and how y'all can get synergy and multiply everything for that. And then on a personal note, as I'm closing here, and this is something that nobody at Clemson knows, so you can't share this with any of your Clemson relationships, but I'm very excited. As many of you know, I got my PhD in 2015. I'm teaching classes. I'm a lecturer now, but I'm progressing to this Palmetto Leaf program that I shared with you about a little later. It's going to become 75% of what I do and 25% teaching. So my relationship with NAADA, I'm doing everything to make sure it stays intact, that I can continue to do that, though there'll be other professional associations I connect with. I am holding a luncheon in January with all of my staff to appropriately transition all of what I do in my roles to all of them. We've kind of done the succession plan. In fact, I shared this past NAADA about succession planning. But one of the fun things I'm doing is I'm calling it the Circle of Life Frozen Luncheon, because we're celebrating the Circle of Life, and all of them, I've got great Lion King figurines that they're all get to pick one. But Kirby, who learned through a 360 review this summer that everybody on the planet thinks I'm overcommitted. So I am letting go in the frozen part of my luncheon. So for all of you who are student services people, who are alumni professionals, we always want to say yes. In fact, Maury Williamson, who is truly our venerable patriarch, when I was a young, literally just starting, I said, Maury, what does it take to be successful? He said, say yes no matter how many pieces of rubber chicken you have to eat out at your alumni chapter. That was the back in the day before we had everything digital. So don't be afraid to look at programs, what you're doing, to let go when needed, so you can focus and target that 20% of your programs are going to produce 80% of your success. And recognizing that teaming up with development colleagues, student service colleagues, administrators, departments, we can all share the load for long-term success. And so as we close here, I want to offer you warm hugs from Olaf as I'm doing some letting go in my life. I cannot thank all of the NAADA professionals. And as many of you remember, one of the things I asked at last NAADA is, would you share names of individuals in your states? Well, I've been working with 14 different states, put together a great spreadsheet. All my funding for the first year and a half got approved 2 Mondays ago. So I want to say thank you to my NAADA colleagues for giving me those entrees and names. We're moving forward with that. And as I said, exactly what we're talking about here, because of my relationships with alumni, because of my relationship with fundraising, a program like this, we're hopeful is going to be very, very successful to equal the quality of programs in y'all's states. So warm hugs, Olaf hugs from South Carolina to all of you, wishing you Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Tina, thanks for organizing this and leading the alumni. And if I can ever personally be of help to any of you, you know my name and number. I'm easy to find here in Tigertown. So Tina, I'll give it to you for final thoughts.
Well, Kirby, you have been a resource, a mentor, a friend to many of us, and so we wish you the best in the new chapter that you're going to start. We'll miss you very much. So I'm very glad we were able to capture you today and share some of your insight with us. So please help me in thanking Kirby. We all know we love to hear Kirby's thoughts and wisdom, and I think it's something that we all just get so busy in our day-to-day and the things that we're doing. Sometimes we've got to take those blinders off. And again, as Kirby said, who else needs to know? And so it's all about communication. That's what we do. Sometimes we do that better than others, but I think that's the name of the game. That's who we are. We're about building relationships, and all of us have to work together to make that happen at each of our institutions. So again, thank you all for participating today. We will try to do another alumni beg, borrow, and steal in the spring. We're going to try to do one a semester. So if you have ideas or comments, please feel free to let me know. Also, we have our Facebook page, and so if you are not a member of that, to share ideas, our listservs. There's many great opportunities to stay connected throughout the year. So again, thank you, Kirby, and thank you for all of you for participating today. This was recorded, so if we want to share that with colleagues, I'll be putting that out, and we'll be sharing the link with you. So again, thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thanks, everybody.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Fantastic job, Kirby, Tina.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.